Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily. It's what day is it? It's Thursday. Because I got Alpha here. Confused. I see you here and I don't know what day it is. How you doing, brother?
It is February 26, 2026. And it is Thursday.
2/26. This is a day with only three numbers in it. 2/26/2026.
Hold on. 2/26.
Zeros and twos are the only, and sixes.
I was trying to count how many twos we had there, but we're good. We have an extra two. We had 3 twos. I was like, that's bad. That's bad. But no, we got 4 twos. So we're good.
Why are 3 twos bad?
That would have been 6666.
No, that would have been 2222222.
No, that's what I'm saying. Now I'm glad we have the extra one. So we're not the 666.
Did you see the thing about Prince Andrew and his birthday and the 666 connections?
I did.
Did you see the connection on the date that the horse thing happened?
I did.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that because no, not the number of days between when the horse thing happened and when he was arrested, but the date itself.
Yeah. That it was, if I remember correctly, that was like I'm trying to remember, but I did see that long post where it talked about it. I saw it interesting.
Well, it's crazy conspiracy, but the date itself, 4/24/2024, if you add up the two digits side by side, it's 666. That was freaking weird. And that was also
it was also an anniversary of something, in addition to the 666.
I don't know. It's my wife's birthday, so there you go. It's an anniversary of her birth. I'm not going to say her age because you're not allowed to do that. Anyways. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not done so yet, please smash that thumbs up. And let's go ahead and talk about our first sponsor for today. And that is, of course, Native Path Collagen. I just loaded 2 scoops into my coffee while the intro was running. Guys, collagen is not just about your nail or your skin, your nails or your skin. As we get older, our bodies stop producing as much of this critical protein starting in our late 20s. And as a matter of fact, it continues on from there. It's not good. You got to supplement it. And that's when joints can start aching. I think mine started aching long before that. Hashtag Marine Corps. Recovery slows down and everything just feels harder. This specific collagen is grass-fed, pasture-raised, and designed to support joints, bones, mobility, skin, hair, and all the stuff that we tend to lose with age. There's no weird taste or complicated routine. You just add it to your coffee or smoothie and voila, you're done. It's just part of your daily routine. Right now, get a special bundle deal at a fraction of the retail price and free shipping. This offer is only available at getnativepath.com/badlands. Again, that's getnativepath.com/badlands. If you've been thinking about supporting your body instead of just pushing through the aches and pains, go check it out. The link is in the show notes. And again, it's getnativepath.com/badlands. All right. I love native path collagen, man. You just pour like 2 heaping scoops into your coffee and it just disintegrates. You don't even know that you're drinking it at all. It's fantastic. So speaking of your hair, because I've noticed with collagen, my beard goes absolutely berserk. Let's jump in and get a word from Soft Disclosure.
In a quiet town where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Patriot's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
You boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential,
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
and she made her demand,
Shave them all off,
or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
and you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard, because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
All right. Softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands, and we have the best advertisements for Soft Disclosure. I see Alpha's over there combing away with the beard brush. Yeah. Yeah, I love it, man. Softdisclosure.com. All right, guys.
Very impressed with this.
Yeah. When I got it, go ahead.
You know, when I'll get a beard brush. I'll look at the reviews and be like, oh, let me give this one a shot. I get it. It's in the trash. It's either too coarse or it's too soft, you know, or it's too small, you know, or it just, you know, it's not there. There's only one I've ever found that I like. And the only thing it was perfect as far as everything is it didn't cover a lot of surface area. But you guys have seen me on the shows where I've used it before. This thing is that with all the surface area. This thing is amazing.
The key to this brush is the curve. The curve is the key because it allows you to do the corners of your beard and still get, you know, like when it's a flat brush, you just get that one point of contact right in the middle. So I'm not even reading that comment from I've adapted. Just look in the chat and there you go. No, I'm going to venture to say it probably doesn't, although beard hair is strikingly similar. All right, let's get into the news, folks. Everybody has been tagging you and me in this story here. Former U.S. Air Force pilot arrested for providing defense services to the Chinese military. Former U.S. Air Force officer and pilot Gerald Eddie Brown, call sign Runner, was charged for providing and conspiring to provide defense services to Chinese military pilots without authorization in violation of the Arms Export Control Act. Since at least in or around August of 2023, Brown willfully conspired with foreign nationals and U.S. persons to provide combat aircraft training to pilots in the Chinese Air Force. This training was a defense service under the International Traffic Arms Regulation, and Brown lacked the required license from the State Department to provide that training to foreign persons or foreign military units. Brown served in the Air Force for over 24 years, leaving active duty in 1996. He commanded sensitive units with responsibility for nuclear weapons delivery systems, led combat missions, and served as a fighter pilot instructor and simulator instructor on a variety of fighter and attack aircraft, including the F-4, the F-15, the F-16, and my personal favorite, the A-10. Brown then served as a contract simulator instructor for 2 different U.S. defense contractors, training U.S. military pilots on the A-10 and the F-35 Lightning II Joint Strike Fighter. Around August of 2023, Brown began to negotiate a contract to train Chinese military pilots using a co-conspirator to negotiate with Stephen Su Bin, a Chinese national who in 2016 pled guilty to conspiring to hack into the computer networks of major U.S. defense contractors and steal sensitive military and export control data for the People's Republic of China. He was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. In December of 2023, Brown traveled to China to begin his work training PRC military pilots. Brown answered questions for 3 hours about the U.S. Air Force on his first day in the People's Republic of China. Brown remained in China until he traveled to the United States in February of 2026. So for over almost 3 years, about 2.5 years, it sounds like this guy lived in China and was training them on the F-35. Now, the interesting thing, and I don't know how much, I'm sure he's got some knowledge on the F-35. He was out in 96, so he didn't personally fly one. But there's a lot of sensitive information in that aircraft that the Chinese would love to get their hands on. So it's not so much that he was training them how to fly F-35s, but more the information he knows specifically about the F-35 and its, weaknesses and things like that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Oh, yeah, you were a pause there, so I wasn't sure if you were taking a swallow or what. No, I agree. You know what I mean? The technology. Well, one, and granted, these pilots, I think you could put them in pilots that have already flown very sophisticated aircraft. You could put them in the cockpit of another aircraft that's really sophisticated, and I don't think it would take them very long to figure out how that operation is going to unfold. You know what I mean? So I'm not just saying you could plug in a commercial pilot, although I don't know. That's not my forte. But yeah, the technology is something that's absolutely critical, and that the Chinese would have. I mean, this has been a problem with a lot of the people that are being arrested. We've seen it, all this stuff going over to the Chinese with the Navy guy. There's a reason the Chinese are after our tech, not just military, but our tech in general. So no, I agree with that.
So what's interesting is the F-35 has had a very complicated, past, a very short past, but very complicated with the U.S. We've had several crash. You remember the one in South Carolina that just mysteriously disappeared?
Yep. Ejected the pilot and just disappeared.
Yeah, ejected the pilot. The wingman stayed to monitor the pilot, on the ground and make sure that he was okay. And the plane just disappeared. And I haven't followed up on this, to be fair, but I remember I followed that story for like a month or two after, and I know a guy that his son is an F-35 pilot, and he does instruction on the F-35. And I was asking him about it. I was asking him like, hey, is it normal for the pilot to stay and stay with the wingman rather than track the aircraft? He was there's certain things that aircraft is capable of. And remote piloting, I believe, is one of them. I'll fact check myself on that real quick right here. But the F-35 had a great past as well. Remember, it's the one that shot down that balloon that flew across the United States for over 2,000 miles. But yeah, man, it's concerning, dude.
The F-30, I don't know if you guys know this, but one of them crashed in my backyard.
What?
Yeah, right out here in the valley. And yeah, because they have a lot of bombing ranges and training ranges for our fighter jets that are out here and our bombers. And we had one that crashed out here. If I'm trying to remember correctly, I think it clipped another fighter jet. I'd have to go back and I'll see if I can find the story here. But the part that was interesting is when I reached out to my buddies, because it was in Riverside County Sheriff's jurisdiction. I want to say it was Thermal or Mecca where it ended up landing. The military was out there fast and keeping law enforcement away from the scene.
Absolutely.
That tells you, how much they want to protect that technology, to go to this story. I'll see if I can find it. That was quite a few years ago, but I remember thinking then, man, those planes just don't clip each other. Like, come on.
Well, to correct the record, it says, as of February 2026, the F-35 cannot be remotely piloted in the way a typical drone is controlled. It is a crewed aircraft designed to require a pilot inside the cockpit. However, Lockheed Martin has plans to make the F-35 a quote-unquote pilot optional within the next few years. In May of 2025, Lockheed CEO Jim Taiclet stated that the company could integrate autonomous capabilities developed under the next generational air dominance and collective combat aircraft programs into the F-35 within 2 to 3 years. This would allow the aircraft to fly autonomously or be controlled from a ground station, though not through a traditional remote piloting. So it's saying that they don't have that capability yet, which means it very well could have that capability already, and we just don't know about it.
They wouldn't tell us, man.
No. But I mean, again, you look at what that aircraft did. It ejected its pilot and then continued to fly on. That's remote piloting to me. You know, I mean, unless you have a rookie pilot that's like, what does this up here do? Let me see what happens if I pull these.
If I push this button.
I don't know, man. Crazy story. But yeah, to the pilot himself, like maybe this is where we finally get treason, because I don't know how you fall short of calling that treason, going over and training a hostile military, a hostile nation on our technology. Do we know the extent of what he told them? I mean, when he's been in the Air Force for 24 years and was, probably still had a clearance. I'm sure he had a clearance to be able to train pilots on the A-10 and the F-35. I don't, if we're just going to kind of pussyfoot around this and be like, oh, well, he violated the Export Controls Arms Act. No, he violated the sovereignty of the United States. That's treason. He violated his oath that he took to the Constitution and to this nation. And yeah, I don't know, man.
So
is this the crash?
Yeah,
I think you did tell me this.
Yeah, September 29th, 2020, right here. Marine F-35 jet crashes after clipping wings with refueling tanker in the Coachella Valley. A Marine Corps F-35 jet in the Coachella Valley crashed after clipping wings with a Marine KC-130 refueling tanker during a mid-air refueling exercise, according to a Marine Corps statement. And you see, obviously, the KC-130 that's there. And if they showed it, there's, play it without the audio, you would see the plume of smoke from the F-35. But wow. It's how do you clip wings with an F-35? And it just, I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm not a pilot. This would be a great question to ask General Kwas. Like, hey, General,
how does that happen?
Is this logical? You know what I mean? I mean, I could see if they're coming into position or something like that, but I don't know. I don't know.
I should have actually tried to get him on the show this morning to talk about the implications of what this guy did. Hell, he might even know him. They were, around the same time. I mean, by 1996, I think that General Quast he was a 3-star. He had to have at least had a star by that point, 1996. The process for generals to pick up rank is not it's not like a Lance Corporal to Corporal. Yeah, man. I'm not a big fan of the F-35 in the first place. I've looked at the amount of money that this thing has cost the U.S. taxpayer, and the implementation of it. The rollout. The A-10 was like the pride and joy of the military. Like every infantryman in the world or in the United States, every infantryman knows how significant the A-10 was for us, in Afghanistan and Iraq.
That's the air grunt, bro. You know what I mean? Hell yeah.
I know. We go around bird.
That thing's built like a damn grunt.
Yeah. So all right, let's go ahead and jump into this story here. So yesterday we talked about Fani Willis, and I was saying that Just the News putting out some, maybe kind of laying down some narrative here. Well, they got another big story on Fulton County in Georgia. Georgia prosecutor pursued Trump. Biden DOJ, quote unquote, invited her to get a lucrative grant. This is pretty concerning right here. The Biden Justice Department invited Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to apply for a lucrative sole source grant in 2022 at the same time that she was pursuing an election interference case investigation against Donald Trump. Quote, I want to document your recognition of our progress and services provided with dynamic partners as we complete sole source steps for our new grant award, a grant in which you invited us to apply, said Willis in a Justice Department letter, in a letter to the Justice Department senior policy advisor, Scott Pestridge in the Office of Justice Programs in December of 2022. The district attorney was highlighting the Justice Department's 2022 Office of Justice Programs Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative grant, which her office ultimately received $2 million to implement its programs. Maybe that's how she afforded to pay Nathan Wade $600,000 for his service. That award was opened in April of 2022 as a competitive grant, but it appears to have been provided to Fulton County as a quote-unquote sole source, according to the district attorney. It says the Justice Department defines a sole source procurement as a non-competitive, meaning no other entity could compete against Fulton County for the award. This award was just a fraction of the more than $18 million in funding that the Justice Department's Office of Justice Policy gave the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office from the time that Willis took office in 2021 until 2024. I mean, that is a very, very, again, Ash and I talked about this yesterday. We got to go back and watch her testimony when they were investigating, her relationship with Nathan Wade, because under oath, it appears as though she's lied a few times and said that she had minimal engagement with the Biden White House and the Biden DOJ. Nathan Wade traveled to DC and had a meeting, but they don't know what the gist of the meeting was. And now we're finding out that they had a $2 million competitive grant that was offered to her, recommended. Hey, Fanny, we got $2 million for you. You just need to apply for this grant, is essentially what it sounds like was said. Like,
I agree with you completely. But the problem is, it's her statement's still going to make it. It's wordplay. Well, I said I had minimal contact. I didn't say I had no contact. So then it becomes subjective. In the realm of where she's at, is 2 million something that would be considered minimal, or is these kind of, so that plays into it. Regardless, you still have the what's the quid per quo, kind of
quo.
Yeah, quid pro quo. There you go. You still have, it looks like something like that's afoot, and it absolutely has to be investigated. And here's the thing too. Now, granted, this is what's come to the surface, but it's not the only one.
Right.
And so, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent, but it's important to what this article is kind of implying, right? That there are these deals that were made. And if we're seeing the consistency stuff, I don't know if you saw, we had 10 FBI agents. I know I saw the reporting this morning that were involved in the investigation with Trump and Mar-a-Lago. I got that. Okay, good. So I won't go there. But, we've talked about it before, a criminal enterprise. Well, the reason proving that a criminal enterprise exists is because once you have that and you have these other predicate crimes that are showing that they exist as well, now you get to expand a search warrant to what we call an injunction operation. Now, like for instance, if I know that this particular gang gets guns in, and I know that just because this gang member are the ones that we caught stealing guns or caught with guns, I know based on the history of gangs that they share guns, to hide them, different locations, each other's houses, because that's the way a gang works. Now replace gang with criminal enterprise in this same situation and replace guns with these payoff deals. If you show that this is consistent behavior within this criminal enterprise, now you can start, as long as you can identify these people as part of that network, you can start hitting other people with search warrants and wiretaps and uncover everything. I personally think they're already doing it, but if they're not, they need to start doing it, because you get that's the fastest way to get information through these injunctions versus trying to independently research every individual person.
It's the whole case on that, there's, in addition to what's going on in Fulton right now with the ballots and everything else, the predicate of, or the premise of Fannie Willis's investigation into President Trump is now coming out, that did they actually know that President Trump wasn't interfering, but was actually exposing? You go back to the Nathan Wade, Senator David Perdue, who's now the ambassador to China. the testimony that he gave, Nathan Wade was presented with evidence that he should have researched, he should have investigated, he should have looked into, and chose not to, and, you know, turn a blind eye to anything. The reason I'm bringing this up is I'm reading right now the petition's response in Fulton County. There's like a whole bunch of filings going on. There was supposed to be an evidentiary hearing tomorrow in Fulton County on the search warrant for the ballots. And I'm reading all these documents right now, all day yesterday, and I got more to do today. And the argument that they're making is counter to the argument that should have been made in this case. The state is making the argument here that the FBI and the DOJ had evidence that these claims have already been investigated, and they chose not to look into that evidence. Well, that's the same thing that you're seeing with the Fani Willis case, where Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, was presented with evidence that he chose not to look into, right? He decided, I'm going to turn a blind eye to this. I'm going to allow this persecution, not prosecution, persecution, to continue on. And now you're seeing the exact opposite role here. Now, I'm going to do a show this afternoon, probably at 3 p.m. I'll do it after Daily Herald, reading through the petition's response, because it's pretty badass, but it's also not full enough, and we'll get into that. But yeah, there's a world of hurt that's going to be coming down on Fani Willis, I think, in the coming months for that malicious prosecution that she took up. You brought up Alpha, the Kash Patel thing, so let's call an audible here and shift into that here. From Reuters exclusive, FBI obtained Kash Patel and Susie Wiles' phone records during Biden administration. Now, this story is kind of interesting. I wrote a story back in August right here that Dan Scavino had his Google accounts compromised by the FBI, subpoenaed, and had to hand over stuff. And Kash Patel said, yeah, I got one of those too, in response to that, meaning that the FBI went after their Google records. Now, this was the phone records here. Apparently, it's, you know, a little different. But there's a huge admission in here that should have been the headline. And we'll get to that. The FBI subpoenaed records of phone calls made by Kash Patel and Susie Wiles, the FBI director and White House chief of staff, respectively, when they both were private citizens in 2022 and 2023 during the federal probe of Donald Trump. The FBI's actions that took place largely when special counsel Jack Smith was investigating whether Trump interfered with the 2020 election and had hidden classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Quote, "It is outrageous and deeply alarming that the previous FBI leadership secretly subpoenaed my own phone records along with those of now White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, using flimsy pretexts and burying the entire process in prohibited case files designed to evade all oversight," Patel said in a statement to Reuters. And then, of course, we get Reuters running more interference on this than I've ever seen, saying Reuters could not independently verify many of the details about Patel's claims, including the full extent and timing of the seizures. Okay. Democrats in Congress have consistently defended Smith from the previous GOP criticisms. Okay. And then this one down here, Reuters could not independently establish what records the FBI attained or who approved the subpoenas. You have the FBI director telling you this. Like, name another article, Alpha, name another article where Reuters is this protective of the validity of information. That's 3 in 6 paragraphs. 3 of them are devoted to saying we can't verify this. When do they ever say that? Never.
Bro. Yeah, I'm with you on this.
Investigators routinely subpoena and collect records of phone calls during investigations, even of prominent people, while seeking to determine the key facts in a case and who might be involved in a particular incident. So 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 out of 6 defending the possibility that this is just, you know, hearsay information. But here's the biggest takeaway, if this is true. In 2023, the FBI recorded a phone call between Wiles and her attorney, according to 2 FBI officials. Wiles' attorney was aware that the call was being recorded and consented to it, but Susie Wiles was not. Now think about that for a second. There's a lot to unpack in that statement alone. First of all, you go ahead and comment on the law enforcement recording a conversation, attorney-client protected.
Well, see, this is where, I mean, you just can't, you know. Well, let me be very careful here to navigate this because people try to discredit. Technically, you can in the process of recording somebody's phone calls. But the second, as a law enforcement officer investigator, you recognize that this is an attorney-client phone call, you have to immediately discontinue listening. So, you could be honest and be like, what's a reasonable time? Anywhere, you would say from 30 seconds to a minute, you should be able to figure out, okay, this is a client and an attorney's conversation that's unfolding here. And you immediately stop. Again, that's still a little subjective, but it's there. Now, here's the thing. Even if you were to listen 2 to 3 minutes into it before you discovered that it was an attorney and client call, but you still discover it's an attorney client call, it's not like you get to say, oh, well, this is everything we got to hear until we discovered it. No, don't work that way. So there's that. The other portion, this is the part that kind of made me raise an eyebrow. It's somebody here's dirty.
Yes.
Is it the attorney or is it Susie Wiles operating through plausible deniability? Because if her attorney made this command decision, then I'll say the attorney's dirty. I 100% I'm going to go there. But would the attorney risk that situation without telling their client, knowing that if law enforcement's doing it, it's going to get documented somewhere? Go ahead.
So here's my issue with this, and take all your opinions of Susie Wiles, put them aside here for a second, because I'm not a fan of hers whatsoever. I have people that are working on things that are not. They're saying there's obstruction there. There's obstruction, and she is the gatekeeper. So again, I'm not a big fan of hers whatsoever. However, that being said, if the FBI is turning somebody's attorney and using them as an informant against their client, that corrupts the entire system. Imagine Alpha, if your attorneys in your case, the FBI went to them and was like, hey, can you turn state's witness and sell out your client and allow me, consent to me to record a phone call between you and him? Bro, that's another level of corruption that it would just collapse the entire justice system. Go ahead.
It would. I think we think that happened at length, regarding those things. But here's the thing, and maybe I misunderstood the context here. Are they being allowed to listen to use him as him or her as an informant, or was this, hey, we listened to the call, we notified the attorney that we listened to the call, and the attorney just never disclosed that to his client?
No, this specifically said consented to it, which implies before it took place.
Can you bring it up one more time?
Yeah. This implies that the attorney consented to it. It says Wiles' attorney was aware that the call was being recorded. So that's in real time.
Yeah. So
that's in real time. And consented to it, which means that there was an acknowledgement from the attorney to the FBI that this was taking place. And Wiles was not privy to that. That's
dirty
unforgivable.
South,
that is unforgivable right there. That attorney should be disbarred. The agents that made that contact and pierced that attorney-client privilege by no way. And then there's another huge takeaway in this statement alone. In 2023, the FBI recorded a phone call. Wait a second. I thought they were just getting toll records. Weren't we told that they were just getting toll records? They were just getting who called who, not necessarily the content of the call. Well, here is an FBI acknowledging a call that was recorded between Wiles and her attorney. It's not even Wiles and Patel or Wiles and Trump. Wiles and her attorney. Man, I got a lot of issues with this right here. And
I mean, there is. Yeah, there's no way around it. This a lot of dirty people here.
This is dirty. And, again, going back to the Fannie Willis, I think the reason that they went after him so hard at the state level was because they knew that even if he was convicted, even if he somehow won the presidency, he wouldn't be able to touch the conviction. He wouldn't be able to pardon himself. He wouldn't be able to do anything like that. And now what we're seeing, I think they fought tooth and nail to ensure that Kash Patel would not be in the position that he's in. And
they still
Kash knows all this stuff. And you want to talk about cleaning up the swamp again? This is something that is going to be a long, drawn out process. It's not going to be instant results. And so, yeah,
they still are trying to take him down.
I know. Every day. So that to me, that was freaking absolutely shocking. That's the biggest takeaway from that entire story right there.
Yeah, no disagreeing with you.
All right,
I still don't know if I buy that she didn't know. I get it. The facts are reported right there. At least the fact says, they articulate them, but something tells me there's still a little more there.
They could be. I mean, what was the gist of the call?
Mm-hmm.
I guess perhaps, but I mean, either way, any call that you have with your attorney is private.
Yeah, the expectation of privacy is there, and there's no courtroom where that argument's not going to win.
I'm watching. I watched Lincoln Lawyer. Have you ever watched that?
Phenomenal movie.
No, the show, the TV show.
No, I didn't even know there was a TV show.
The TV show is even better than the movie.
Really? Okay.
TV show is fantastic. Season 2 just came out, and I don't want to give away too much, but there's a scene in there where they're going for a bond hearing, and the guy's in prison, and he's talking with his attorney, and he says, "Well, hey, is everything in place for Mexico?" And all this stuff. And when they have the bond hearing, the counsel presents it and says, this guy's a flight risk. He might be going to Mexico or whatever. And they turn around and they had like documents and stuff. And they turn around and they say, Your Honor, you need to hear the entirety of the conversation. And they recorded the conversation in the courthouse. It's an attorney, in the prison, in the jail. It's an attorney-client, confidential conversation. And so they play the call. The attorney that's seeking the bond plays the call. And at the end of the call, after they hung up and there's no longer a recording on there, and they say, "This is the attorney for so-and-so. This was a predetermined conversation that we did to see if there's a violation of my client's First Amendment and attorney-client Fourth Amendment rights. And this was just a test. He has no plans to flee, blah, blah, blah." And just made the prosecutor look like a complete buffoon. And yeah, so yeah, anyways, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but that's kind of what it reminded me of right there.
Yeah, listen, unfortunately, courts are dirty, man. It's, yeah. I've experienced it firsthand for quite a few years, and it sucks.
I know you have. All right, let's jump into the SAVE Act. We've got now 2 back-to-back remarks from Senator John Thune on the SAVE Act. President Trump, on the State of the Union. By the way, we haven't talked about that. What did you think about the State of the Union? I
loved it. I think Trump, the form that he's in was spectacular. The poise, 100%. The other part, what made me, so if it was just the State of the Union without any outside factors, I was already extremely impressed. But what made me kind of even look at it and be even more impressed with them is about an hour, 2 hours before the State of the Union started, you saw the video clip with Schumer, right? Where they ask him, so Schumer gets briefed by Rubio, and the gang of 8, and they're asking him, and he comes out and he actually behaves like a professional politician. Like, he doesn't try to subvert the president. He doesn't try to seed like a bad narrative or anything like that. He just says what's going on in Iran is important, and the president has to sell this to the American people, and walks away. But the dude looks like he's seen a ghost, like whatever he was briefed on. So whatever he was briefed on was enough to make him be a politician, like the way they're supposed to be. Like, got to give Schumer, like, that's probably the only one time you'll see me, acknowledge that he was being a professional. And
I stand with Schumer on shutting the government down over DHS.
So, well, but obviously there was some level of intelligence that existed involving Iran that's very concerning. But now you go into the State of the Union, and is there any part of the State of the Union where Trump looked concerned or overwhelmed no, the dude just looked poised and solid. So I was like, this guy is just, he was top form, man.
He
Top
was.
form.
That was exactly what I posted, top form from Trump tonight.
And they planted those bullet points to, keep everybody's hope up, but made sure that there was a consistent reminder, these people are crazy. Some good stuff, consistent reminder, these people are crazy. Like it was a perfect State of the Union.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was about as good as it could possibly have been, and the longest recorded State of the Union in history. Didn't seem like it. It didn't seem like it. He's getting a lot of flack. We'll talk about it on Sit Rep tonight about all the medals that he gave out, and we'll get into some of that stuff because some pretty impressive stories that we got to unpack. So we'll do that tonight on Sit Rep for sure. But this was a big point, the SAVE Act, right? This is something he pointed out specifically and said that Congress needs to pass this and not they need to make haste on it. They need to get this done right away. And let's watch these two clips from John Thune here.
And if so, when?
Well, we will. We'll put the Democrats on the record. And it's a stark contrast, Aisha. The Democrats, even in the chamber last night, having to sit there and try and defend allowing non-citizens to vote in American elections. That is a losing proposition for them. So we will get a vote on it. And we are right now in the middle of a government shutdown, so we've got to try and get the government opened up first. But in due time, we will get that up on the floor. We will have a vote on it. We will make sure that the Democrats are on the record. It is a stark contrast between Republicans and Democrats about how they want to handle elections in this country. And this is going to put them, I think, in a very difficult position. And it's an issue, if I were running as a Democrat in the midterm elections in November, I wouldn't want to have to defend.
So what Thune's saying there is we're just going to put it to a vote. That's all. Okay, that's not the point in passing the SAVE Act. We know that it will not, garner the 60 votes required. We know that's not going to happen. Like that's a given. That's a given. Nobody is questioning that. The issue at hand is the rules on whether or not you're going to do a standing filibuster or you're just going to let them say, hey guys, we're going to filibuster. And they're like, oh shit, don't do the filibuster. We don't want the filibuster. We concede. Cry uncle, whatever. They're chicken shits. And then this is I don't know how much longer after this was, but this is his second remark about it.
What's your message to the Republicans in your conference who are pushing?
Oh, let me change it. You guys get a little insider as to what I go through in the mornings at 1.5 speed.
Over and over again that you can do this with the talking filibuster.
Well, there are a couple things about that. One is once we get on, if we were to go down that path, it's very hard to pivot and get back to open up the government. I frankly think we ought to. We need to make sure the DHS, TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA, all those agencies are funded. And so I'm hopeful there will be a breakthrough on that. That's going to require some, obviously cooperation from the Democrats, which we haven't seen a lot of so far. But we want to get to the SAVE Act. We also, as I mentioned, we've got a housing bill that we can pivot back and forth to if we get a deal to open up the government. That's harder to do once you're in the throes of a talking filibuster. The talking filibuster issue is one on which there is not certainly a unified Republican conference, and there would have to be. If you go down that path, you're talking about the need to table what are going to be numerous amendments and an ability to keep 50 Republicans unified pretty much on every single vote. And there isn't support for doing that at this point. As I've said, and we will get on it and we will have a vote on the SAVE Act. The context of that, the process in which we consider it is still an open question, but one that we're having conversations about, but clearly not a unified position, at least among Republicans in the Senate.
But it sounds like that.
So
That's a clown.
Absolutely a clown. Mike Lee put this out on X and said, not unified on the talking filibuster to pass the SAVE Act. It's time to get unified. We can't afford the consequences of inaction. GOP senators who aren't supportive should identify themselves and make their case rather than silently stalling. Share if you agree. Now, here's the thing. the GOP and both parties, the Democrats do it just as much as the Republicans do it. They're unified on everything, almost everything, you know, especially when it's something that's going to benefit them, something that's going to give them the sound bite or the, you know, the bragging, you know, look what I passed. We got all this money for all this shit. But the second that you have 50 senators, right, out of 53, I think the only ones that are out are Murkowski, McConnell, and there's one other I can't think of that doesn't want the SAVE Act off the top of my head. But either way, everybody else is unified on this, apparently. But Susan Collins, I guess, and the others won't go as far as getting rid of the filibuster. Get them in line. Get them in. This is one time. This is one time when I will advocate for unity in the party. I want the chaos in Congress. I want people to not get behind party lines, but get behind their own personal beliefs on something. However, this is one that, again, you look at the numbers, 83, President Trump says 89% of Americans back this. Get behind it. It doesn't matter what your personal beliefs are. You're not there for your personal beliefs. You are there to represent us. And when you have something staring you in the face that says everybody supports this, you better fucking support it too.
You know, his excuse is exactly what you were trying to say is what needs to be weaponized against the Democrats here. He's saying we if we do that, then we're going to get held up on these amendments. We're going to get held up on all these other bills. So that's literally right now the Democrats that are weaponizing the filibuster against the Republicans. That's what he's saying. Look, we can't because of this. So that's the Democrats in the Senate putting their boot on his neck on not making it go forward. This is the opportunity to become offensive and be like, well, then that's the way it's going to be. We're going to the vast majority of Americans want this, and this is the chaos that's going to unfold. You know, everything that you articulated right now. I just wanted to point out the fact that the excuse that he's making is showing that the filibuster is something that's weaponized against Republicans, even when the conversation's not coming up, because the very concept of utilizing it is something that, okay, well, then we're going to stall the stuff that you guys want to do on everything else. Let's go. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, we got a housing bill. So who cares? Who cares about a housing bill right now? We can pass that. Nobody's gonna. No, we got midterms coming up in like 6 months before they start voting. What are we at now? February. So about 7 months until people start voting. Okay, that's a very limited amount of time to pass law to get change, implemented. Now, President Trump, I know he's got some cards, an ace up his sleeve on this, and I'll wait till he plays that.
I think he's kind of showing one of them, because here's the thing: you got to win the Senate. He absolutely has to maintain control of the Senate, and the 4 states, North Carolina, Maine, Michigan, and the other one leaves me right now, but the one that I wanted to bring to attention was Susan Collins, because you mentioned her earlier. And she's going along with this process so far, at least to a point.
She won't go as far as the filibuster.
Yet.
Yeah. That's the one you guys need to go. Phone calls, emails, Susan Collins.
But none of us, I don't think, would have guessed she would have even went this far with this. And she did. And I think the reason being is, and I know people aren't going to like this, and I am not a Susan Collins fan at all, but she wins. And he needs to maintain control of that state. And she does vote the majority of the time along, with Trump on a lot of these issues. I think it's like over 90-some%. So that's important, whether we like or not, as maintaining, control of the Senate. One of the things that was presented to me, and I fact checked and I said, this is accurate, is, the president in his second term, the incumbent, they lose the House. In the last 23 House races, they've lost 20 of them. This includes Reagan, and everybody loved Reagan. So, you're looking at an 87% likelihood that Trump loses the House, just because statistically that is what has happened, 20 times out of the last 23 times. So if that's the case, he absolutely has to maintain control of the Senate. And I think the fact that she even went this far means that people are already in her ear. The right people are in her ear, and there's probably deals being made, deals that we don't like. We don't like some of the, the backings, that Trump puts his name behind, but it ain't about feelings. It is about the win. And he knows more than we do. So
I think that Collins is going along with the SAVE Act, knowing that it's basically ceremonial, right? It's just, hey, I did it. I voted yes, but sorry, we didn't we didn't get the votes for it. We didn't quite get there. And so now we're going to continue on with the same old shit. Like you just said, the 20 out of the last 23 midterm elections in a second year for a president, in a president's first year, where they have a trifecta going in and they end up losing control of the Congress, is a product of, in my opinion, a product of the stolen elections. It is a way to maintain the status quo, maintain the ineffectiveness of government, to maintain the chaos. It kind of keeps things going along, right? You have the kind of the competing dark versus light, the Jedi versus the Sith, and they have to have that balance. And the balance is you give him the first 2 years, and then after that, you kind of clip his wings a little bit, and then you're only able to get the essential things done. And everybody says, "Oh, well, it's because they're wildly unhappy with the first couple of years." That hasn't been the case with Trump in either of the first two terms. Even looking at last night's speech. Let me play this clip real quick from.
Again, that's why I brought up Reagan, so people can use that by comparison.
Right.
They loved everything he was doing.
Correct. But here's the State of the Union speech, the results afterwards.
Watchers tonight, 64% say his policies will move the U.S. in the right direction. And look at the growth President Trump made over the speech. So pre-speech, it was 54% of speech watchers said his policies will move the U.S. in the right direction. After the speech, that number goes up 10 percentage points. So Donald Trump made some progress with people watching the speech from their pre-speech expectations to what they saw in the speech itself. And that 64% number, that's pretty much in range across all of his State of the Union addresses. In his first term, last year, the joint session, that's about what we've seen. Is roughly 2/3 have walked away from his speeches thinking he's going to move it in the right direction. So
just going back to those numbers right there, like look at historically, 2018, right? 62% said we're going in the right direction. 2019, 71%, 2025, 66%, 64. I mean, those are really good numbers. Those are really good numbers. I'd be curious to see, some sort of a Democrat alternative like Obama or maybe Biden's State of the Union comparisons there. But my point is that with those types of numbers in an election year, and then this one's glaringly different because this is the first time we saw that parallel programming last night, with the giraffe and the frogs and the dildos and all the stuff that they had at this absolute shit show. Like, if you're a Democrat right now, you've got to be embarrassed by what they did with that. You probably were like, I'm gonna watch this Democrat counter programming and I'm gonna see what's really going on. And it felt like a freaking comedy show, and these are supposed to be the people that are oh so serious running our country. So I can't imagine that the collective of the State of the Union versus the State of the Swamp came out as anything positive for Democrats, which ties into why the SAVE Act is so important, because if we don't clean up the elections before 2026, before the midterms, then the status quo continues, even though it's almost as glaringly obvious as it was in 2020 with Trump against Biden.
If and some would say not if, but when the SAVE Act doesn't pass, I think that's when Trump plays his card with the elections. And then that's gonna, man, that's gonna create there'll be a lot of content, put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen some ideas, and maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow night on Why We Vote. We'll get into some of the theories on what President Trump will be able to do to get around this, if it doesn't come to a vote. But in the meantime, feckless Congress doing what feckless Congress does, illegitimate people passing bills that name post offices and continuing resolutions.
MTG
is no longer in Congress, dude.
But she's one of the ones that she renamed a street and renamed a post office.
Yeah, they all do it. They all do it. That's all that they can do. They all do it.
Oh,
It lies in the Senate right now. The Senate is the most heinous.
I agree with you. It's just a lot of people out there want to be cheerleaders, and I just want to remind you guys, she renamed a post office in the street. Yay.
I mean, name one that hasn't done something dumb like that.
Oh, I'm not going to argue with you on that, but
okay.
We acknowledge that, but we say MTG.
You're isolating a macro problem at a micro scale.
Because she self-proclaimed herself as one of the leaders in the movement, and I'm showing that she wasn't.
So one of the things that MTG, when I interviewed her at the symposium back in, I think it was 2022. I can't remember if it was the 2022 or the 2023 one. One of the questions I asked her was about, what she does to hold them accountable. And, one of the things she told me is that she does not allow, or she did not, she's not there anymore. She did not allow them to, do these kind of vote by proxies, like the I votes, right? Like, so they'd go to pass a bill, like naming of a street, and they'd be like, all in favor, say aye. And they'd call aye, and they'd be like, the ayes have it, and move on. And they're like, the ayes didn't have it. And as a member, you can call for a recorded vote. And she would come in and call for a recorded vote. And then everybody had to have come back for a quorum, and everybody had to punch in. Everybody had to listen to the reading of the bill. And then everybody had to cast a vote on record. Now, is that a great thing? Yeah, it's not great, but that's how you hold them accountable. That's how you get people's name and put people's name to certain things. Whereas an I vote, it's just, oh, the ayes have it. Well, who are the ayes? We don't know. We don't know who actually voted for this, but the ayes have it. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm saying. Now, again, Congress itself is wildly illegitimate. Until we have elections that we can trust and answers to the questions that exist on previous elections, then all of it's for nothing.
She also went to go see if J6ers were being treated like shit. They tricked her and kicked her out, locked her out, and she didn't do nothing about it.
I mean, we saw what happened when what's the woman that went to the ICE detention and pushed the federal officer, and they ended up charging her.
I'm not saying she had to do that, but she couldn't have gone and made the moves to let's stop the funding going in here. Let's
How? It was a Democrat Congress. They're not going to defund. They're not going to defund prisons over J6ers. They were in the sham committee out there at the time.
How did the Democrats, who were in control of everything, stall us from doing everything? They just create headaches, right?
No, they filibuster in the Senate. Our government, the filibuster is
no. But what I'm saying is, outside the filibuster, they just create. Even if they can't stop something from passing that we want to pass, they do everything in their power to make it the greatest headache. You just articulated one of the things that she did. Doesn't move the needle, but it created a headache and called people in for accountability. She could have did the same thing. I'm not saying the end result would have been effective the way we wanted, but it would have showed that she tried, and she didn't. She went and did sound bites. That's all she ever did was sound bites. And the same thing with Matt Gaetz. Now, granted, as a podcaster, I like what he's doing, but as a politician, he didn't. And when I called him out on the record, and it's recorded, and said, hey, why aren't you guys, and I referenced MTG too, why aren't you guys passing these bills your constituents want? His response was, well, the senior GOP members they're not allowing us to. That's a valid excuse. And I'm willing to accept that excuse from him with the added information. Okay, I said, fine. Tell us who those senior GOP members are so we primary them out. And his response is, I'm not going to tell you that. Well, now your excuse is no longer valid, because what you're saying is you're going to continue to protect the establishment. You're not allowed to do the job that we want. And these are the people that are preventing you, according to you, if you're telling the truth. And so we're asking you who these people are so that we can remove them. So this way you can do the things you're doing. You're saying you won't, then you are protecting the establishment. And people got pissed off at me because that was in a recorded space. And, the person hosting it was a friend of mine, and he was not happy. But I said, well, dude, you guys are doing the same shit that we complain about with Biden, throwing these softball questions. Like, there's legitimate questions we need to present these people with and hold them accountable. I mean, it literally got to the point where the next question, he's like, I lost the audio. What was that again? It's like, your audio's been working great all night. And because All of them are the establishment, man. There's very few, if any, that we can pick that aren't.
I agree with that mostly. So you mentioned earlier Trump, when you were talking about Collins, she wins, right? And Trump understands that the main goal is winning. And sometimes you got to, what's that?
It sucks.
Yeah, it does. And I want you to apply that same logic to MTG. In the case you're specifically talking about, the J6 funding of prisons, or the congressional funding of prisons when they thwarted her from going in for January 6th, she had zero chance of winning. Zero.
100%.
There's no way that bill. So all it would have been doing is killing time, killing efforts, whatever the case might be. She did what she could do, and that is use a massive platform to bring attention to that. I remember watching the press conference she did with, I think it was herself, Matt Gaetz, and I'm trying to remember if it was Burchett or I can't remember who the other person. It might have been like Chip Roy or somebody that was also there. But
you are right, and it would have never passed. But I disagree with you, and that's all it would have done. Here's what would have happened. The people in those institutions, the guards, the correctional officer, the warden, because they're anticipating, okay, now cameras are going to come in. Now an investigative committee is probably going to come in. The living style of those inmates, those J6ers, even temporarily, would have improved.
There is no committee that would be coming in because they had the control. The committees are assigned.
Anybody can call for an investigation into a federal.
You can call for it. Doesn't mean it's going to be voted on, because they were still the majority in all the committees. The majority party has all the committees now. And this ties into your point that you were making about, I think you said it was Matt Gaetz that you were talking to. So here's the other thing. What do you remember what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene in 2021?
I think they censored her, didn't they?
Well, no, not just that. They kicked her off of all committees that she was on. Every committee she was kicked off of. She had not one committee that she was a member of because she called them out.
Well, here's the thing. I'm okay with that, because then
that's not what you want to do.
It is because and this is why. This is how you expose the mechanism, because then the next Republican goes in and does the same thing she did, and then they get kicked off. And the next Republican goes in and does the same thing that the two prior ones did, and they get kicked off. And
until the only people that are left in there are the guys that go along to get along and meaningfully go along to get along, not the ones that do it publicly and then really they're kicking and clawing in the committees and saying, why aren't we doing this?
And that's when all these people say, hey, look, they come out to us, the voters, and say, look, every single one of us went in there to do the thing that you want us to do, and we get removed from these committees. There's none of us left to go in there. What do you guys want to do next? You're the people. And then the people sit there and say, damn, we've had 20 damn people go into this committee and get kicked out. This is a problem that can't be ignored, because we've just seen the lawfare process of it. It forces the issue to either be dealt with or ignored. But if we just completely bypass it because it's going to be confrontational, then the mechanisms of how it happens never get exposed. It's exactly what I think Trump's doing right now with his entire administration. The tariffs is a perfect example of this. If Burchett comes and says, hey, weeks ago, hey, there's other avenues that we can use for these tariffs. So then one would argue, well, if Trump knows that, and he knows that he's going to get pushed back and all this stuff's going to get brought to the courts, why even go that route? Just go with the one that you know is going to work. But by him doing this, and getting everybody in all these conversations, we all tapped into it. We all saw it. And now we're all seeing, like, everybody got exposed to how the mechanism works. And this is something I put on a video the other day. And I said it last night too, talking with John. The deep state's not afraid of arrests. They're not afraid of substacks. They're not afraid of bills. None of this stuff the deep state's afraid of, because they have 100 people to arrest the people, to replace the people that we arrest. They have, like, the only thing that the deep state fears, or the globalists, whatever name you want to call them, is the exposure of how the mechanism works. Because if we recognize, not at the politician level, if we recognize at we the people, the voter, how this mechanism works, then, because the inevitable end is going to be arrest, it's going to be RICO cases, that's going to come. But when that comes and we've learned the way the mechanism works, that's how we actually stop this from ever happening again. And that's why when I told Matt Gaetz, tell us who these people are, because guess what? Even when he tells us and we want to go primary them, the elections aren't fixed yet, so we still can't primary them. But then that frustration builds in the American people, because it's like, we had a guy that tried to do it. They wouldn't allow him. He told us who wouldn't allow him. We went to primary him. We know we had the numbers and we still couldn't do it. What the hell's going on here that we need to fix? It forces involvement.
Yeah, see, I think that there's, if you look at this in a military application right now, there's a lot of people that are not a lot, but there's people that are, working clandestine. They keep, some of this stuff that they believe, the MAGA, America First populist ideology, they keep that to themselves for the most part, while they do the work in the committees that they can, until we have the elections cleaned up and we can actually get quality, quote unquote, Republicans, conservatives, whatever you want to label them, into the main general elections. And the primaries are always key. I will say that 1,000 times. The primaries are key. The deep state, the establishment, they don't give a shit about general elections because they've already got the person. Do you have a good an establishment Republican or an establishment Democrat? Either way, they're okay with either one. It's the primaries that you get the people in and you get those reinforcements in there. And until the elections are fixed, it is going to be a clandestine operation. It is going to be, little jabs that you're able to take here and there in committees in getting something done, rather than, massive, effective change, rescinding a lot of the legislation that's out there, rather than making new legislation. But, it is what it is. I think that we ultimately agree that until the elections are cleaned up, there is nothing that can be done to change this situation. As Chris Paul would say, even with the SAVE Act, they're only talking about the SAVE Act right now because they know that if this passes, they have another way to go about doing this. And they're always going to be 2 steps ahead of us until, well, in my opinion, until we get rid of these black box voting machines. But we can continue on with the SAVE Act. I think the SAVE Act will make a significant improvement, but I just don't know if it'll be enough. But
to Chris's point, and I do agree with him that they're going to be 2 and 3 steps ahead of us, and I think that's why it's paramount that we all actually understand how this all operates, because then they won't be 2 and 3 steps ahead of us.
Right.
But as long as we just keep being passive, then we're always just going to be going, it's going to be what we've already been doing the last couple of decades, and that doesn't work.
All right. Well, sorry, had to get something there. All right. We got to move on from that. And let me just check something real quick. And sorry, I got to make sure. We've been having some issues here, and I got to make sure that we got to talk about a sponsor here. And I don't know. Okay, it's not working. So let's hold off on that, and we can talk about GART 11 Nashville is coming up, guys. Virtual tickets for GART 11 in Nashville are now available. Grab them at a special early bird price now between now and March 15th. After that, the regular price of $40 will kick in. You can visit badlandsmedia.tv/events to snag the lowest price for the virtual tickets. You can also, I don't know if there's still in-person tickets available, but GART is always a fantastic experience. If you guys have never been to one, 10 out of 10 recommend. Let's go ahead and jump into our next story here from The Guardian. Trump's pick for Surgeon General dodges vaccine questions at Senate hearing. Before I get into this, Alpha, this is kind of, one of those things that you kind of get in. You're pretty well up on all this stuff. What's your opinion on Casey Means?
I don't know much about her, man. Some of the people that I were tracking on X that made comments about her, I didn't really see anything bad. But like I said, I haven't delved into her. So I don't know, man. I don't want to say one way or the other and be wrong, because I haven't committed the research to it yet.
Okay, fair enough. I know there's a lot of Nicole Shanahan, RFK Jr.'s, running mate when he was running for the Democrat ticket or the independent ticket, whatever it was make me a promise that neither Casey or Callie Means will be involved in your administration. So, but here's the article. Casey Means, Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. Surgeon General, appeared before the Senate Health Committee hearing in which she defended her medical credentials, sidestepped direct questions on vaccine guidance, and blamed the country's chronic disease burden on ultra-processed foods, industrial chemical exposure, lack of physical activity, chronic stress and loneliness, and over-medicalization. I agree with every single statement that she just, every single one of those things right there. In her opening remarks, she said Americans were angry, exhausted, and hurting from preventable disease and called for a great national healing. Democrats quickly expressed their concerns about her ability to push back against the health secretary, RFK Jr.'s misinformation about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Quote, I have serious questions about the ability of Dr. Means to be the kind of Surgeon General this country needs, said Senator Bernie Sanders. Means graduated from Stanford Med School, but said she did not complete her head and neck surgical residency at Oregon Health and Science University and is not board certified and does not have an active medical license. They forget to tell you she voluntarily gave up her medical license because she's not practicing. But all of those things reside with me. I hate the medical industrial complex almost as much as I hate the military industrial complex, but yeah,
Bernie bro going against her is definitely a plus.
100%. Absolutely. That's like
I was like 1 point her already right there.
That's one of the best endorsements you could get right there. It's him and Elizabeth Warren are the two that if they go against her, I'm probably going to go for her in terms of medicine. Means declined to give a simple yes or no answer on whether she would encourage parents to vaccinate their children with routine shots, such as measles, mumps, and rubella, saying, quote, I'm supportive of vaccination. I do believe that each patient, mother, parent needs to have a conversation with their pediatrician about any medication they're putting in their body and their children's bodies, Means said. Now, that's a very cookie cutter response, but it's better than just the standard response we've been getting that, yes, the vaccines are safe and effective and make sure you're getting all of your kids the vaccine, right? She's saying, have that conversation with your pediatrician. She repeatedly sidestepped direct questions from lawmakers about whether vaccines cause autism, a theory long discredited by the scientific community and promoted by Kennedy. I hate when they say that. Long discredited by the scientific community. You mean the one that was bought and paid for by the vaccine companies and big pharma? Yeah, that one. Quote, the reality is that we have an autism crisis that's increasing, and this is devastating to many families, and we do not know as a medical community what causes autism, she said, while acknowledging that there is an overwhelming body of evidence refuting claims that vaccines cause the condition. Okay. Now, why would there be an overwhelming body of evidence refuting claims that vaccine cause that condition, Alpha?
Because the institution that's promoting it's the institution that's doing and creating those claims.
Bingo.
Now let me take pause. Oh no, go. I'll wait till the end because it'll sidetrack us.
Okay. Well, let's finish then. Quote, I also think that science is never settled. And I think that the effort to look at comprehensive cumulative exposure into what is causing autism is important. Means has spurned the medical establishment, noting that she dropped out of her residency because she grew, quote, disillusioned with traditional healthcare, which she claims focuses on diagnosis and prescriptions instead of diet and lifestyle. And then lastly, another huge endorsement right here. Former Surgeon General Richard Carmona, who served under George W. Bush, told the Guardians that Means' nomination was, quote unquote, a disgrace to the future of America's public health system. Quote, she has no significant public health background experience and she has no scalable leadership experience, he said.
Well,
go ahead. I'll let you jump at that.
When people like that are saying it's going to be a disgrace, that leans me to be like, well, maybe they are more credible if they're being attacked by that group of people, but just to remind, like, I agree. She has to be honest, right? And if the information that's put in front of her regarding vaccinations, all these peer reviews and all these claims are all indications that we don't know, she has to respond based on that information because that is her position. She's not a citizen. She's not someone who's campaigned like that. She doesn't get to speculate. It's here's the evidence that's at hand. And so based on the evidence at hand, yes, this is what it indicates or implies. She has to like that because the second she deviates from that, they're going to say, well, look, this is why we should have nominated her. She's just going to be out there. They're going to label her just a wingnut, right? Which we're all okay with. I get it. But still, this stalls the process. This goes back to when everybody lost their mind over Bongino and Kash Patel when they said after an investigation into Epstein's death, there was a suicide. And all the panicans, right? Some of them are in the audience. They're going to get mad at me. Oh, that's it. See, they're paid for. They're compromised. No, they're not. It's the same theory here. If all the evidence that's put in front of them indicates that it was a suicide, they have to report it was a suicide. That's just the way it is. They may feel in their heart, I don't think it is, but they don't get to go and now be a pundit.
Right.
These are people that are professional investigators that have to report on what the facts are that are in front of them. Now, granted, I think we'll learn stuff down the line, and there's other stuff that I've been talking about for a very long time. 18 USC 3521. Go look it up. You'll be like, ah. But I just wanted to remind people of that. It's the same theory.
Yeah, I'm with you. The information that's put in front of them is from the institutions that benefit from it. One of the things that we learned during the COVID pandemic is how much, not just the universities and everybody else and the pharmaceutical companies themselves, how much they benefit from, these types of reinforcements from our bureaucrats, but how much the bureaucrats are benefiting from it. One of the biggest takeaways from the COVID pandemic era was learning how much licensing these guys get as individuals, not as a, this isn't like the pharmaceutical companies paying this money to HHS as a whole. They're paying it to individuals within HHS as licensing, and then of course, when they give us this information in open records, they redact the amount. So we don't even know how much they're making from these pharmaceutical companies. And so, I think during that hearing, Dr. Means does the right thing. And like you said, the facts in front of her, she presents, but at the same time, she's also saying, hey, this science is fluid, right? It's constantly changing. Questioning science should always be a thing. Like science is never set in stone. Like this is 100%. And so, I'm with you on that. I want to play.
I will fire back on some of the audience that made the statement. Quite Cooney says, Dan and Cash were never professional investigators. That's completely false. That tells me you haven't researched their backgrounds. Both of them were, and especially go look at the prior assignments that Cash Patel had. And
he was a public defender. He's defended drug cases, narcotics trafficking. He was Trump tasked him with numerous investigations.
Counterterrorism. He was in the counterterrorism. He was
counterterrorism. Yeah, that's an absolutely bonkers statement to make. You might not like the progress that's being made or the surface level progress, but that's your opinion, and you're entitled to that. But to say that he's not a qualified investigator is bonkers. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I agree with that. Like, you're entitled to your opinion. I can understand people's frustration if, they're gauging, what's the lack of what's going on. But then I'll also say, if you're gauging the lack of what's going on, then you're probably just listening to people, not researching.
Yes, I will agree with that. And yes, Richard Rohr says Cash he wasn't JSOC, but he was attached to JSOC. There's a little bit of a difference there. All right, let's go ahead and jump into, we got the sponsor thing worked out now, I believe. And so, yes, we do. Okay, guys, I recently made the switch to the proper toothbrush. It's pretty badass. And it's one of those things that just made too much sense once you hear about it. I want you to picture something for just a second. Think about the brush that you're using right now, and it's probably packed with all those little abrasive nylon bristles. Ask yourself, would you ever wash your car with a nylon bristle brush? Of course you wouldn't. You destroy the paint very quickly. So why on earth are you doing that with your teeth and gums twice a day? We are essentially grinding down the enamel and wrecking the gums with outdated technology. Proper did away with the sandpaper approach, and instead of nylon, they use engineered TPE scrubbers. They actually flex and give under pressure. They don't just poke at the plaque. They scrub it away with a smooth, controlled motion that's actually gentle on your mouth. It's about working smarter, not harder. On top of the tech, there's the principle. Proper is made right here in the United States. No cheap overseas imports, no giant faceless corporations cutting corners to save a nickel. It's a solid build for people who value quality and American manufacturing. If you're tired of big corporate's way of doing things and you want a brush that actually protects your health, hit the link below and check out Proper Dental. Use promo code RUMBLE15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order with Proper Dental. And the link is in that comment right there. So go ahead and check them out.
Boom. Chicken. Just to deviate one more time, because Quiet Coney wants to double down. Says he was a lawyer. Counterterrorism as a lawyer. Statement of fact. I never said he wasn't qualified. I said he was an investigator. You're wrong again. I will tell you, with someone who's worked with lawyers in specialized units, they are investigators.
Yes.
That just because you want to say they don't hold the title of an investigator doesn't mean that they're not investigators. There's something that happens when you get this collaboration of different offices. I was, by title an investigator, a detective, but I worked hand in hand with lawyers and prosecutors who have a different title. In the process of this work, because you work with them at length, and in the process of that, guess what I learned as an investigator? I learned the judicial process and the laws and all the things that come with it. It's a list of things, like the jury instructions, for example. So when I went back and did my work as an investigator, I applied what I knew as an unofficial lawyer into my investigation, because I knew where that went. That's also reverse with these lawyers that are in specialized units. They learn how we do our job. So they know these investigations. So when they're combing through files, a lot of stuff that we actually investigate as investigators is a result of the investigation that the attorney did, the prosecutor did, and said, hey, I need you guys to go and look into this further. So they are indeed investigators.
All right. Let's jump into this story here just briefly, because there's not much information on it. But from the New York Post, allegations of corruption trigger FBI search of home and office of Los Angeles Unified District Superintendent Alberto Carvalho. According to a source, it says the searches were carried out at Carvalho's San Pedro house, his office at the LAUSD headquarters in downtown LA, and at another location in Miami tied to the investigation. Now, quick correction, it's not in Miami. It's actually in Southwest Ranches, which is my neighborhood. And that is not in Miami. That's in Broward County. An affidavit was filed concerning the search under seal. A report from the LA Times alleges that the raid was tied to the LAUSD's dealing with All Here, an AI company that developed a chat bot for the school system. All Here's founder, Joanna Smith Griffin, was charged with fraud in 2024. The Florida raid happened at the home of Deborah Kerr, a salesperson who has clients, including All Here. She has historical links to Carvalho from when he was Miami's school chief. She previously claimed in court documents that All Here owes her $630,000 for helping close the deal in Los Angeles, and that is all we have. So I don't know if you've heard anything in your neck of the woods about this story, but
not yet.
The one thing I did hear is that there's going to be millions of dollars exposed that this guy was covering up corruption. But I haven't heard that yet. I that was an ephemeral experience yesterday. I saw on X. 76 million, I seem to recall.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. No, I look forward to the next several search warrants we see in the next 30, 45 days that are going to result from this, because the dude's going to be looking at serious punishment and consequence here if he doesn't cooperate. So
how do you go from like a superintendent in Miami, and then you go all the way across the country to Los Angeles? And it's not lost on me that he came over to the United States as an undocumented illegal immigrant and somehow, I guess, got naturalized and is now, did it the right way, all fairness, but is now like a huge proponent of anti-ICE rhetoric and all that stuff. And so, it's not lost on me that the two places he went to were Miami and LA, probably two of the largest populations of Hispanic voters. And, and
illegal voters
and illegals. Right. And, big time. Miami's not a sanctuary city. Well, as far as I know, it's not, but they really don't care down there. Like it's like you go down to Miami. I said this yesterday. You don't have street signs and billboards in English anymore. My light's on the fritz again.
I was just like, let's throw on some house music, baby. I have the same question you do. My speculation is they know what areas of operation that they control to move their people to. You know, I have a feeling we're going to see some good things with California in the next 36 months, man. Like,
36 months. How about 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, but even when the good stuff happens, it still takes a while for the ship to turn around. You know what I mean? The legal stuff, yeah, we need that to happen in the next 6 months and all that. You know, I want to say, I think it was yesterday. You know, somebody was telling me that voter ID is going to be on the ballot here in Cali. And so,
yeah, but with the current situation, it won't pass.
so, well, let's be honest. Trump shouldn't have won 2024, not because of a lack of votes, but system isn't fixed, and he did. So there's some alley-oops that are tossed in, you know. So I'm hoping we get one of those with that, because
remember, I think it was maybe a month ago when we were covering the fraud from Gavin Newsom's former, what was it, chief of staff, I think, and tied that back to the Biden administration and the DOJ and all that. Yeah, you got to think, you know, we talked about that at the time. I think you called it tickling the wire, you know, by putting these feelers out there. And all the Minnesota stuff comes after that. And then, you know, there's been a lot of illusion from President Trump that California is going to be next. California, Maine, Massachusetts, Ohio. But California is one of the big ones. So, yeah, I'm with you, man.
Y'all want to see me like just lose my shit in happiness? Give me secured elections in California, man. You guys will see me behave like I did on January 13th of 2025 again.
Let's get into this clip here of JD Vance talking about the fraud. He's the new czar. He's the new fraud czar.
Americans. So we're announcing today that we have decided to temporarily halt certain amounts of Medicaid funding that are going to the state of Minnesota in order to ensure that the state of Minnesota takes its obligations seriously to be good stewards of the American people's tax money. Now, what is this going to mean? What this means is that, first of all, the providers on the ground in Minnesota have actually already been paid. The state has paid those providers the money. What we're doing is we are stopping the federal payments that will go to the state government until the state government takes its obligations seriously to stop the fraud that's being perpetrated against the American taxpayer. There are a few different ways that we're doing that. There are a few different affirmative actions that we're taking today. Dr. Oz is going to talk about those, but let me talk a little bit about the spirit of this and why we're doing it.
All right, we can pause there. The big takeaway from that is the power of the purse, right, is what the federal government has. That's the only leverage they have over these people, because apparently they're not allowed to go in there and audit any of this data, even though it's data that they assign to, you know, the people, social security numbers, et cetera, et cetera. They're not allowed to go in there and audit. So this is the only recourse that they have if they can't investigate it and they can't audit it. So, you know, it sucks, because if you're withholding Medicaid, there are people that genuinely use, you know, Medicaid that may be affected by this. Maybe, I don't know. He does say that the money's already been allocated to Minnesota. They already have the money. I think this is like future funding that if they don't get this cleared up, you know, in other words, they have kind of a buffer between like the money's gone and where we're at right now. So it's about time. It's about damn time.
Yeah. It's a tough one because people do depend on this stuff. You know what I mean? And we know the likelihood of them just running through that buffer to push, you know, the VP and the president to be like, well, look, they're the ones taking your money from you now.
Yeah, but you got the umbilical cord, man.
Yeah. And that's the part. And it's rough because we're talking about fellow Americans, some of them good, you know. Agreed. Even the bad ones, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say that, you know, they shouldn't have that type of funding available to them if they haven't done anything wrong. You know, it's a hard one to navigate, but that's why I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions.
Agreed. All right, so we got a couple geopolitical kind of stories that we're going to get into real quick. This one from the Cuban embassy in the United States. On the morning of February 25th, 2026, a violating speedboat was detected within Cuban territorial waters. The vessel, registered in Florida with registration number FL7726SH, approached up to 1 nautical mile northeast of El Pino Channel in Cayo Falcones, Corralillo municipality in Villa Clara. When a surface unit of the border guard troops of the Ministry of the Interior carrying 5 service members approached the vessel for identification, the crew of the violating speedboat opened fire on the Cuban personnel, resulting in the injury of the commander of the Cuban vessel. As a consequence of the confrontation, as the time of the report, 4 aggressors on the vessel were killed and 6 were injured. This is spicy. The claim here is a boat from Florida, a 21-foot Proline made in 1981. 21-foot Proline. That's a small boat. So like a bay boat almost. Probably a center console, but a bay boat. Guys fishing. Somehow made the trek 90 miles south from Key West. Who knows where it actually came from? Made the trek 90 miles south, ended up in Cuban waters, territorial waters, and they're alleging that they opened fire as they were being approached by Cuban vessels for an investigation, and they shot back and killed 4 people. And yeah, I mean, those are the only facts we know. We can give our comments on it, but
I love this story for another reason that people aren't talking about. We kind of talked about that. This screams like we're these Gladio operatives and stuff like that. Like I'm there with you. But I love this because it helps kind of destroy some of the arguments that the left makes. So hold on. Because if you look, there's a lot of left saying, why was there a U.S. boat going over there by Cuba? Why were they invading Cubans' territory? And I'm like, time out, you mother, right? So you're telling me we should respect the borders of another country? Like, is that what I'm hearing right now?
Open borders, baby.
Is this the argument you really want to make? Because you just spent the last decade saying that, bring everybody into California, all this mass migration. But now you're saying we should respect borders? And 2, well, then these ones fired at the Cubans. Okay, if you want to say you believe that fact, you do know that the cartels have fired at our Customs and Border Patrol, right? So what you're saying is you're okay with our Customs and Border Patrol laying waste across the borders if they say someone fired at them, right? Well, that it's just I love this story for that.
Yeah, I look, a 21-foot boat with 10 people on it going 90 miles.
That's a lot of people for 21.
That's a lot of people. I guarantee you they're over Coast Guard capacity. The capacity on that boat is probably 5 people on a 21-foot Proline.
I used to have almost a 25-footer, and 10 people on that would have been crowded.
Mm-hmm. And so you got 10 people going over there. Who knows, man? Attorney General James Uthmeyer, the Florida Attorney General, said, I've directed the Office of Statewide Prosecution to work with our federal, state, and law enforcement partners to begin an investigation. The Cuban government cannot be trusted, and we will do everything in our power to hold these communists accountable. And then I want to jump over here to the Newsweek. They're the ones that took that vessel number and looked it up and found that it was a 24 foot, not 21 foot, 24 foot Proline built in 1981. Diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Cuba remain tense, with President Donald Trump suggesting on a few occasions that he would like to see a leadership change for the island nation, while also looking to make a deal with the nation on oil imports. Diplomatic ties were restored with the island during Obama's administration with the reopening of embassies in both countries. And Marco Rubio says in a statement on Wednesday that it is highly unusual to see shootouts in open sea like that. It's not something that happens every day. It's something, frankly, that hasn't happened with Cuba in a very long time.
This pure speculation. I do see some people saying, my boat tag says this. Granted, my 25-footer had a boat tag on it too, but the practical application of it is when you put that body weight on it, that to get to speed and all that stuff, it's just and the fuel issue, like you're pushing that boat. And again, I'm assuming we're talking about adults here, so that's a lot of body mass that's on there. But my speculation is it probably didn't start with 10 people on that boat. Was that a boat crew of maybe, five or six boat crew, and they were actually picking people up from Cuba. And these people were escaping or fleeing, or operatives picking up operatives, and that's where this gunfight was taking place. My mindset kind of leans more somewhere down that storyline.
There is no good that comes out of a boat, a Florida registered boat, going down to Cuban waters with guns. And even if you have the guns, and you're able to I just, we wandered, we drifted too far. We were fishing and we just drifted. By the way, fishing is great in the 90 miles from between Key West and Cuba. You don't have to go to Cuban shores. I mean, they have the same fish down there that we have off of our coast. Even if you do wander into those waters, you don't shoot at them. There's nothing good to make of the people on that boat if the story's to be believed. Of course, this is the Cuban side saying this. We're covering, Ash and I are covering stolen elections with Colonel Towner right now, and everything in that book is Venezuela and Cuba. Everything is Venezuela bad, Cuba bad, America good. We're not stealing elections. It's totally the Cubans and the Venezuelans. And is there an effort to, spark some sort of a color revolution in Cuba, an intelligence regime takeover down there? Who knows?
Let's take it over.
You know what? At this point in time, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. I would be more okay with a Maduro type extraction in Cuba. Well, I think Maduro was an extraction. I would be okay with a capture in Cuba long before I would be okay with the capture in Venezuela. Cuba's way too close. We got boats over here. When you used to watch the local news in Miami, like in the 90s, like every day, a Cadillac or a Bel Air, Chevy Bel Air, floated up by 55-gallon drums all around it, loaded down with Cubans coming over, and they had the wet foot, dry foot. So they roll up on the beach, they get on land, and boom, they get asylum. So, if we're going to do something, go ahead.
Why don't we just go conquer Cuba and the Caribbean islands and all that? No, seriously, why not? They're already in the Gulf of America, pretty much. Close enough.
So the Newsweek article that we covered, President Trump says that, they make note that he wants a regime change down there, which I totally get it. But he also says that he wants a deal with them to make a deal with oil, right? And knowing President Trump, the latter is the more likely goal of any action he's going to take. Does that require regime change in order to initiate a trade deal with Cuba? I don't know how that would work. And again, if you believe the stories that were being told from the certain three-letter agencies that are, kind of front and center right now in the whole election movement, Cuba has completely and totally infiltrated our government, and especially down here in Florida. So yeah, this whole thing is not exactly what I was expecting to see this morning, that Floridians got killed, or a Florida boat. They don't even say if they were Floridians. A Florida boat got lit up by the Coast Guard by the Cuban Coast Guard.
I say Puerto Rico 51, Canada 52, Greenland 53, Mexico 54.
Keep going, right? Just keep.
Listen, let's do some polls in those countries, and if the people don't want to, maybe maybe they want to have like a Puerto Rico type status, and then we say, oh, we respect that, but it's all called North America and South America. Let's just make it America.
I'm with you. All right, this will be our last story of the day. Let's jump into this. So Rupert Lowe's British MP has put together over the last several months, I believe, a panel inquiry. It's crowdsourced, crowdfunded, right? He raised, I think almost £1 million to put together this panel investigating the Pakistani rape gangs in Britain. And he put out a letter yesterday talking about the statement from the inquiry. All right. He called it the statement from the rape gang inquiry. Our inquiry panel has heard extensive and deeply distressing testimony from a survivor detailing prolonged and extreme abuse, exploitation, and trafficking beginning in childhood and continuing over a number of years across multiple locations inside the United Kingdom. It says the panel wishes to place on record that we regard this testimony with the utmost seriousness. The survivors provided detailed, consistent, and specific evidence over an extended period of engagement with our inquiry. She will remain anonymous and she is safe. She has made it abundantly clear that she wants the country to know her story. This is her decision and her decision alone. And there's parts of this that I'm going to not read because it's kind of sick, but the survivor's violent gang rape and abuse began at the age of 12. She was raped multiple times per day over many years. The rapes were filmed and used as blackmail. Tell me when this starts to sound like a familiar story, Alpha. The survivors stated that multiple police officers were active perpetrators. Money was exchanged openly, and this destroyed her ability and willingness to seek help. Police vehicles were used to traffic her, and some of the abuse events were called cop nights. The extreme pain she suffered include film torture in places called red rooms. The torture included waterboarding and strangulation by rope. Distressingly, she was raped by a dog. They filmed it and forced her to rewatch the footage as men placed bets. The coordination of this type of specific abuse was predominantly perpetrated by Pakistani heritage men. During this specific period of abuse, she witnessed the murder of at least 3 girls, one of whom was allegedly killed as a punishment for speaking to the police force. And then jump down here. It says the survivor is understandably wary of reporting the matter to the police because of their involvement. So the panel is seeking an urgent meeting with the Home Secretary, including the survivor, to ensure that the government is fully apprised of the seriousness of this evidence and to discuss the immediate steps required to ensure the survivor's protection, to preserve evidence, and to secure justice. Now, I don't know how similar that is to some of the Epstein claims. We've heard torture videos. We've seen that. We haven't had any descriptions, as far as I know, that are as explicit as that description right there. But before I jump over to you for comment, I was looking to see if the BBC or any of the Telegraph or any of those outlets have covered it. And check this shit out. This is what the BBC has up regarding this. Contact the BBC. BBC's news coverage of the rape gang inquiry backed by the MP Rupert Lowe, February 2026. Summary of complaint. We've received complaints from people who felt there was a lack of coverage of the rape gang inquiry by Rupert Lowe. And it goes on to say that they've covered, some of it, the appointment of Baroness Anne Longfield as the chair, blah, blah, blah. We have limited resources. It's not possible to report on every story which is of interest to our audience. We know that not everyone will agree with our choices of what to cover or the prominence of the stories are given. I mean, this isn't like some crazy person going out there and making these claims. This is a panel that's conducted by several members of the parliament that are, sitting down with a victim and having the story told. And you have a news outlet that doesn't, even if they're covering all the, check marks in the box, allegedly and all that stuff, they don't want to touch this. That's telling, man.
I hear you, man. It's this is where corruption makes things complicated. Because we have Hillary Clinton that's going to be going on here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I could have the time wrong. And what if Hillary Clinton comes out and says, "Hey, I have a whistleblower that told me this about President Trump, President Trump, President Trump, President Trump," to compel, Congress to then pull a committee for that. Right. And I think we're at a time now, and this is just rough, but this is the way it is victim statements have to be somewhat corroborated before we escalate them. Like, you just have to, this automatically happens at the law enforcement level, but we need to see that practice happen at the media level. The putting out a story with zero vetting or cooperation it puts out something. It can be weaponized by the deep state against good people, so
it could be, but you still have an obligation to report on something that serious. Even if you just want to say, these claims are just made in the panel inquiry.
If the panel inquiry has a statement saying after being provided evidence, to corroborate that, then I would say yes. Absent evidence or corroboration, I would say no.
Pretty sure they say that they have evidence in here. He says, he does say the panel wishes to place on record that we regard this testimony with the utmost seriousness. Survivors provided detailed, consistent, and specific evidence over an extended period of engagement with our inquiry.
See, that's an important statement.
Yeah, that's the statement right there that
But then again, look at Eugene Carroll. Our government says she provided evidence too.
Well, I mean, she technically did. It just wasn't legitimate evidence.
That's what I'm saying. So it makes this very complicated.
It does.
What's a legitimate victim that requires justice, and what's a targeted assault to take down someone in power? Because the two can look very similar.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really targeted at anybody specifically. I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, and not just targeted at a person, but is it something that's designed to create conflict? Like the goal could have different looks. You know what I mean? It's complicated, man. It's complicated.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't agree with from the journalist perspective. That's news. And again, if Hillary Clinton comes out today under oath and says that, Trump, this, I expect it to be reported on. That is testimony under oath. Now you can go from there and obviously, the evidence that Trump did not partake in any of those things.
But we're seeing the weaponization of that right now. Look at how many people are reporting on the Epstein stuff as fact, and it's not. It was just something that was in a file.
Yeah, but there's a big difference. Trump literally has half the nation sick with a disease that is apparently incurable.
Well, but that's very true. But this same thing. I'm just saying, it's just. I just think there needs to be a little bit more vetting before egregious allegations are made. Because here's the thing. The people that did that to this woman, if that stuff's true, they should all be put to death, like instantly, death penalty. Like that should be the consequence. As a matter of fact, you had, who was, I think, was it Nancy Mace? One of them that's even passed, I think it was yesterday or today. I saw it on the timeline this morning, to bring the death penalty for child rapists, which I absolutely support. So that means if we're going to talk about the death penalty for a crime like this, we better be damn certain that the crime actually happened as well.
Yeah. Again, we're talking about reporting, not arrests. We're talking about reporting. And I think that a parliamentary inquiry, and a parliamentarian, along with others, there's co-signers onto that letter right there. There's 5 co-signers in total. I think that's newsworthy. So, I mean, maybe, again, it might not rise to the level of prosecution or anything along those lines, or even an investigation, but it's definitely newsworthy.
But this is how they push. I mean, it sucks because you're not right. I mean, you're not wrong, but it's also not right. Like this goes all the way back to the church committee, right? Well, what was the CIA doing? Me and Colonel were talking about this as well. You use reporters to push propaganda. Look at the 51 people that signed off on the Russia hoax, right? With Trump. Newsworthy, yeah, because they know it's going to be. So that's why they plug in the propaganda. However, if journalists would have did a little vetting into that, they would have been like, oh, no, this is bullshit. I'm not reporting this because this is bullshit. Even though it's going to be headlines everywhere else, I'm not going to partake in it because it's propaganda. That's where I'm saying, I think this is a much larger problem that mainstream media and alt media is going to have to balance out, over the next few years, because mainstream media is not going to go away. You're going to see them start to report honestly. As a matter of fact, you just had one. I think, was it, as a matter of fact, no, what was you? Somebody reposted something where CNN came out and told the truth on something. And we've been seeing that a little bit more frequently. And why is that? Because I think they understand they got to start building this rapport with the audience again. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that's going to force alt media to be more accurate and consistent, because if alt media just goes full blown conspiracy and people start to see, hey, well, you know what? Fox and CNN are starting to tell the truth again. That audience is going to leave alt media. And so since neither one of them are ever going to go away, I think that this balance is actually going to force both sides to be more accurate in their reporting, which will address things like this.
Perhaps. All right, let's jump into Rumble Rants. Patrick Manuel 62 says, hey, Alpha, was listening to you last night talking about your LA police experience working with gangs. Have you ever heard of Angel Gate Academy? My brother worked there 25 years or so ago.
I have not. And I didn't work in LA as part of LA. I said Southern California, but most of my stuff was Riverside County.
All right. Bobu Afu looked like an Antifa protester speech. That's the Democrats.
It did. It did. It's so
Dude, it was so bad. They had JoJo from Jersey, and she's like, there's a box of dildos back there. And then the draft guy's like, I can tell you why there's a box of dildos back there, because we throw them at cops. So fucking stupid, man. Well, Texas gal, the election stuff should have been done already. Texas is in the middle of primary voting right now. It would be nice to believe those who go on the general election are legitimate. I'm with you. I got some stories for Texas that we'll be covering tomorrow on why we vote. Thank you for the rant there. You're spot on. Most places are in the middle or gearing up for primaries, and these are the most important, the primaries. The general election, I mean, great. It's awesome to have more R's than D's in Congress, but ultimately it means very little. Harry Vetch, we saw shit like this in Kosovo, actually made me leave the army. I saw similar things in Afghanistan to an extent. And it didn't make me leave the Marines, but it definitely made me, well, that's a story for another day. Thank you, Harry Vetch, for the rant. Artsy Joan, thanks for a great show. Best start to a day. God bless. All right. Alpha.
You did have a super chat over there.
Oh,
too.
did we?
We did.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. We're monetized on YouTube. Where'd it go?
Here, I'll bring it up for you. Oh, I can't bring it up. I can read it if you want me to read it.
Where is it? Why is it not showing up on my thing?
It should be in the starred. Go to starred because I think the super chat's default there. Love and marriage.
Nope, it did not.
I'll read it for you.
It says auto star super chats, but it didn't auto star it for me.
This comes from RPJ Swish. Congratulations on getting monetizations. $5 challenge uninitiated.
That was yesterday. Why are you seeing that today? That was yesterday. We got that rant. Did that just come in today?
Shows 8:13 a.m. my time.
That we got that rant yesterday with the uninitiated as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me check this out because it seems like I don't even know. Okay, there's Badlands Daily Live. We have 233 people watching. Yeah, I don't see a rant on here. That's weird, dude.
Interesting. Yeah, it's there.
It's very strange. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you watching on YouTube, we are monetized. I got monetized on my YouTube the same day. I was surprised. It's been like pending for 3 months. So if you're on YouTube, search at CannCon Actual or youtube.com/CannCon1. Only one N in can, CANCON1. If you want to follow me over there. I am going to do a live stream today, probably at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Fulton County filings, the updates on them. I'm going to go through them. They made a Fourth Amendment claim. We're gonna kind of debunk that claim a little bit and go through some of the updates in the filings. There's a lot. So it'll probably be a little bit of a long, intense show, but stay tuned. Of course, we've got Sit Rep coming up tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. And Alpha, what do you got coming up?
If you guys want to show me some love over there, YouTube too, I'd appreciate it. And it's at the Alpha Warrior Show. Everybody forgets the Sit Rep tonight. And then we got a very fun show on Overwatching the Guardian. I got a special guest coming on. So you folks that like some of those, different types of conversations into the conspiracy world, you're not going to want to miss this one. It'll be a fun show tonight. That's at 11 p.m. Eastern. So if you're not doing anything, pop in, say hi.
All right. And thank you to Alpha for joining me on time.
And this is that me and John, he invited me on, actually it was my first appearance on DPH, so that was pretty cool for me, the Wednesday DPH. And I was looking at the clock and I was just like, I'm gonna be tired tomorrow. I'm gonna be tired. So
did he keep you on for 2 hours? I haven't watched it. I'll probably watch it.
I won't say he kept me on. It was I enjoyed the conversation. So I'm sure I pushed it along as much as he did. And it was a good one. And I still had to get a little bit of editing done. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm just like, okay, I got to be up in 4.5 hours. Like I got to call it a night now. Like I got to call it a night.
Well, go take a nap, Mom.
No, I'm gonna make my coffee and then a cold plunge and then I'm off to the gym.
Oh,
you guys got a cold plunge, man, folks. It'll change your life. I promise you guys. As a matter of fact, sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm actually going to be raffling off a cold plunge. For people. Now, for disclaimer, it ain't that $3,000 one, y'all crazy. Okay, it's an introductory level one. That's super cool. It's a very popular one. So I'm gonna be raffling them off for like $1 or something like that. I might even just do it free and do it something off StreamYard. I want you guys to experience what it's been for me. It's life changing. It really is life changing.
All right. Well, stay tuned, guys. You got Daily Herald coming up in about an hour. Then again, of course, we've got Sit Rep this evening as well. So tune into that 9 p.m. Eastern, and we'll see you guys later.
Did Hillary show up?
I don't know yet. I'm going to go watch.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.